Good day, welcome to Music Motors, welcome to the 2020 Cupra Ateca. Now this is a very special Cupra Ateca. This is the limited edition, and this is also the limited edition that comes with the Akrapovic/Akrapovic, I'm not quite sure how to say it, exhaust. Now this one costs around about £45,000, but a standard 2020 Cupra Ateca is going to set you out around about £37,000. Now this Cupra is powered by a 2-litre TSI, the same sort of running gear we'd see in a Golf R. So that means 300 PS, 400 newton meters of torque. But no, this one's even more special still, because this one has an ABT tuning pack, which means 350 PS and 440 newton meters of torque. A top speed that's raised from 152 miles an hour to 158. But the 0 to 60 time stays the same. Or does it? On paper, it does. In this episode of Music Motors, I'm talking about a car which is effectively for the person who had a Golf R but needed something which could go off-road, needed something which was even more family-friendly with a huge boot. This is a grown-up Golf R with a back-to-basics driving feel when you push it to the limit. So welcome to the 2020 Cupra Ateca. Outside, Cupra have started to change how things are. Now, whilst you can't get away from the fact that it says Seat lighting on the front lights and the rear lights, they're trying to say, no, cool, we may use the same technology and bits and pieces as Volkswagen Audi Group, and we're still getting over the fact that we were previously Seat Cupra, but we are trying our hardest to be completely different now. They're trying to make their limited editions really stand out like never before. I mean, this one, 20-inch diamond cut, bronze diamond cut alloys. And behind those 20-inch diamond cut alloys are beautifully rendered 18-inch Brembo discs. You, on the back of this, have got that fantastic Akrapovic diffuser, but I digress. The front end, really sharp, lovely design language. I like how it flows, and this, being a limited edition, has more gloss black. The only place where it doesn't have gloss black is the wing mirrors, because on top of the real carbon that's on there, which really surprised me, sadly underneath it just has a normal kind of plastic, cheap plastic underneath. Perhaps to keep the cost down, but seeing as everything else is gloss black, it would have been nice to have seen them pay that attention to detail and said, look, let's get everything gloss black. Now the side profile is lovely. The standard Ateca looks great, but this one is a little lower. It's a bit more sporty, and the side profile with the 20-inch alloys really does look the bee's knees. This looks quite sporty, but it goes when it needs to. When you find yourself looking at that back end, the rear diffuser is quite nice. The black finishing touches are really good, and that Akrapovic exhaust is just such a cool design. It's unquestionably cool, and the back end does look quite good. Whilst this doesn't have fancy LED lights front and back like some of the Volkswagen and Audi competitor cars, they are LED, but they're just not a fancy trick LED. Outside, this is finished in graphene grey. Now, it's an interesting colour because you feel like it could almost be a matte finish, but it's most certainly not, but they so easily could have done it. But the limited edition only comes in 2 colours, and both of them are grey. Graphene grey, rhodium grey. Those are the 2 colour options you get on a limited edition. From the outside though, it does make it look like quite more, it just looks more special. But realistically, at the same point, this car feels quite quiet, subdued. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you wouldn't think this was a fast car. The amount of people who I spoke to who assumed that this was just a fancy sport pack on a standard car were then quite surprised to find it had the ABT tuning pack, had 350 PS and got to 62 in 4.9 seconds. The outside is lovely, it's a good quality finish, and it really does look the bee's knees. Gig test time, something you've probably not heard me say in quite a while. It's my first gig in quite a while because of certain situations that are going on in the world. But the gigging test is effectively motorway test, but a long motorway test. Loads of equipment in the back, which you should be shown now. And just generally, how does it do as a motorway cruiser? Each test does its own thing. This is my gig test. Let's go. So the whole motorway thing kind of went down the pan and had to go cross country, but the result was 32 miles to the gallon, which, considering the type of driving I was doing, amount of traffic, start, stop, very good. Comfortable, really easy to drive, more than enough power to get out what you want to get out. It was an enjoyable and easy journey. This soaks up the miles like, well, you'd expect it to, and you don't really feel the road too much, especially when you leave it in the more comfortable modes. But as motorway test goes, well, there was a bit of it, but mostly daily, as the daily test goes, really impressed. Find yourself stepping inside and the quality remains the same. That same Volkswagen Audi Group quality that we've come to know and love over the years is still here. This is, I guess, almost you would say, the last generation of the old tech, because Seat are slowly implementing more and more new tech. The infotainment system, for instance, really good. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, standard sound system, really good, but it's older technology. That again, it then follows on to the display right in front of the driver. It's really good. It has everything you need, but it's a bit small and it feels a bit like Audi 7 years ago. The seats are wonderfully comfortable, but whilst they are bucket seats, the side bolsters move as you get in. I can't really figure out what they've done it. Realistically, is it for various body shapes being able to fit into a bucket seat? Potentially. But what I do know is it means that there's slightly more roll in the corners. These don't feel like bucket seats. These feel more like just comfortable seats. Where the previous Cupra I had, the Leon Cupra before it's moved over to Cupra, that was a limited edition. That was an ST-R. And that had Alcantara on the steering wheels. Bearing in mind there's Alcantara on these petrol blue seats, it was a real shame that this didn't have it. Not to say that this steering wheel feels bad, but you just expect a little bit more on the inside, considering this is supposed to be a limited edition, supposed to be something a bit more special. The interior though is comfortable, is very quiet, and looks like it's going to stand up the test of time pretty well, just from the point of it looks like it could be a Golf from a few years ago in the plastics. And we all know those last years and years and years and years, so it's pretty decent. Rear passengers, loads of room, good amount of headroom, easy access to get in, and the rear seats don't get too much of a kicking from the rear seat passengers. The boot space is unquestionably good. It's huge, and when you put it in this sort of segment, it is quite easily one of the biggest boots that I've had to deal with. The only issue being that it's not as wide as I would like it to be, because I can't fit my base in sideways, but that's it. That's the only criticism when it came to the back of it. The rear seats have got ISOFIX, the front seats are comfortable, the visibility is good, the comfort quality is very, very good. It's a very good quality interior. Driving around town is quite an important element of any car, especially when it's going to be a lifestyle, do everything vehicle like this is sold to be. So this is a town test, as it were. This is a test of economy, comfort, visibility, what's it like to drive around town, and I'll give you my thoughts at the other end. Quick little snippet, let's go. Obviously everybody's city driving slightly different, and that was quite a lot of constant going, but it was a mix of 30-40 miles an hour, some huge long hills to climb up, and also some coasting back down the hills. It wasn't too heavy of a city test, but I got 30 miles to the gallon. If you can get a lot of rolling time with this, the fuel economy is fantastic, but the second you aren't able to keep this rolling and you're constantly putting the engine under pressure, well, that's where this drops significantly. But around town, I guess you're never going to see less than about 22, 23 to the gallon, which is edging on V8 juicy, but if you're lucky you get 30, 32. So it's not really, it just depends what sort of city driving you're doing. If you know it's going to be heavy centre of city driving, well, this may be not so suited to it, but then again, neither are any of the competitors. So that's the figures you get. Comfortable, good visibility, locks relatively good, easy to get out obviously, quick to nip round corners, nice good sound system, and it's quiet when the sound system isn't on. It is a good city car, just not if you're stuck in heavy traffic. Performance. And that's probably why you're watching this and you've been saying the whole time, why is this fat guy not talking about performance yet? Well, I'm here. So the 2-litre TSI that we know from Volkswagen Audi Group going through their 4-drive system, that's Seat's / Cupra's system, into a DSG box, 7-speed DSG, which means DSG farts. Standard 300 PS, 400 newton meters of torque, 4.9 to 60, but this being the ABT pack, it does then also mean that 350 PS is available and 440 newton meters. But with all of that on paper, Cupra say that the 0 to 62 time doesn't go down. Having timed it, there is a slight difference. But where the real difference is on the motorway. Where you'll notice this significantly is when you've got stuck behind someone doing 50 miles an hour and you quickly want to zip out in traffic, that immediate torque is right there. On back roads, this feels relatively composed in that you can't get this to play up no matter how hard you throw it into a corner. It just goes in, hold my beer, I've got this. Which is quite cool, but at the same point, doesn't that kind of driving style throw that much back to the driver because it's doing it so effortlessly. The issue then is that you almost become overconfident in the car. It's not until you start finding the limits of the car that it starts giving something back. I mean, by all means, the throttle response in Cupra mode is responsive. By all means, the brake has a lovely feel and they are very punchy. But until you really push it to the limit, this chassis doesn't give much back to you because, think about it, this car was never designed to go as fast as this one is. It just seems to be a hot hatch SUV thing is going on. So everyone's going, hey, we've got a medium crossover SUV, let's make it really bloody fast. But as a result, you're pushing a brick through the air. Now, by all means, this is a fun car to drive, and when it needs to be a very comfortable car to drive. But it's just a shame that it doesn't give you as much feedback as it would do in a Golf, but then it's totally understandable why it doesn't. Just a shame they couldn't have engineered a few more bits in to give a little bit back. Economy-wise, they claimed 32, 33 combined. Totally achievable. That tended to be what I got. On back roads, if you're having a bit of fun, expect about 20. Around town, if you're really lucky, expect high 20s. On a run, and being realistic about this, just being sat on the motorway, you can see 35, 36, not quite as high as a Golf R or an Audi S3 using the same drivetrain, but much bigger car, much more air to move. This makes a lovely sound with the Akrapovic exhaust, really good rasps and pops when it needs to be, but equally can be quite subdued when it needs to around neighbourhoods effectively, so you're not going to annoy your neighbours too much. Typical pops and bangs kind of programmed in, the same every single time that you do a downshift. So realistically, the Cupra is kind of set for everyday life pretty well, because it looks great but isn't too shouty that it stands out to an extent your car gets keyed in the car park, but enough so that it stands out enough that you don't lose it amongst the many crossover SUVs. The interior is comfortable, is very useful, and that boot space is humongous. On a run, you don't go deaf, and the standard audio system is superb. When it comes to performance and economy, well, it's got bundles and bundles and bundles, and it is a fun drive. It's not supposed to be as fast as it is, so the fact that this can do half of what it does is hugely impressive.